and welcome to LIGHTBOB TV. Today we're going to talk about the source control and the accessory. And this came because for years and years I was looking at different ways how I can modify lights, and I always knew that there was other way, but I just didn't know how to do it. So for those of you that think that lights are just the light source is the beginning, uh, it is the beginning. For those of you that think that there is more, there is absolutely more. And 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 today we're gonna the reason why I made this episode is because I just wanted to go and do an overview of the different tools that shape the source, and that modify lights, make it different, packed differently, because we have access to these different tools. Um, and it's very simple. When you think of a carpenter, they have different tools to shape the wood. When you think of a plumber, or you think an electrician, you think of any craft people, they have different tools that have different functions, but all in the same purpose is that we want to modify, a material. We want to install, example, when you install conduit, you have a different set of tool than when you install Romex, et cetera, et cetera. So lighting is the same. As we start to learn the different sources, uh, we also start to learn that there is different things that are happening. As an example, like when we think about source, you may think that the lamp choice, right? The different light bulbs, the LED module that are inside, the wattage, the color temperature. Those are all important characteristic, but in reality, these are just the source characteristic. They're not warrant, or they're not gonna help you to modulate the light into the space. And this is done by adding, different technology, different tools to the source or the fixtures, and the result is that you will cut some glare. You'll cut some, the what we call spill lights will be reduced. The environment won't look so flat. The visual comfort will be better. Um, well, you understand? Like, sometimes we have too much brightness in one place. How do we deal with that? Well, there is different tools that we can use, and that will not affect the rest of the intensity of the other source. So basically, if we have uncontrolled light, it's barely impossible uh, to have a beautiful control environment. So it is very important to understand those little tools, and I learned most of those when I was in the theater. I was, like I told you, I was very blessed. I learned lighting inside the theaters, and my mentor at the time taught us some very basic lighting theory, but that they were classic. They were there to help us. They were there to modulate the light, and some of them were just little add-on that you put in front of the different lighting fixtures. And the funniest thing is that in those days we had very powerful incandescent lights, which were generating huge amount of heat. So it was very hard to improvise different accessory. So, like, even like, let's say you had a gobo. Well, and I'll explain later what is a gobo. But let's say you wanted to project an image on the wall. Well, you had a very limited amount of material that you could use so that they would not melt. Let's say you wanted to put some colors. Colors were the same thing. After an overuse of different colors, and especially when you were going into deep color, deep blue, deep red, deep green, the intensity was so, and the heat was so intense that it would burn or it would discolor those color gels. As I was talking to you last week in one of the episodes, uh, and also you have to think that glass was so expensive. It's not something that we could put and have on permanent and have on inventory for the couple hundred light fixtures we had. So again, depending on what kind of accessory, there's different, like there's different layers of modulation you can do to the light, and some will bring precision, right? Some will bring comfort because they're all nice and soft. Some will give you a certain mood because you can light up a scene and create some leaf pattern and etc. etc. Some will be very, very focused. So again, all those accessories are very important because with the same fixtures, you can have different functions and the same source. So now we're getting deeper into the source world, which may give us more tools and more flexibility to modulate lights and to do create whatever at the end we want to create, whatever concept or idea we want to execute, and make it happen. So when you work with architect, um, they often see the fixture, but they don't quite understand the oh sorry they don't quite understand the light behavior. So they'll see a fixtures and they'll be able to judge spacing, they'll be able to judge size, they'll be form, mounting, but they don't really understand what's happening inside, like what is the source doing. And 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 uh, higher in the hierarchy, like the higher step, you will deal with procurement. And procurement, when you talk about lighting accessory, they see this as just an extra cost. So they'll say, well, we don't need this, we don't need that, and they think they're saving money, and then at the end you will never have the user experience that you want, and the user never know exactly what's happening. And this, you can see this all the time. They have a certain scene, or they have a certain way that a room or a wall is lit, and then they call the electrician, or they decided upon themselves to go and change a bulb, and then they don't realize that there was an accessory, there was a filter, and they don't put it in. And then the first thing you know is that you have like a beautiful movement, and then boom, you have something different, and then it continues. So, and then they call you up and they said, I don't understand what's happening. Like that we didn't do anything. We just replaced the bulb. And then you say, okay, good. Where is the old bulb? Or where is the accessory? Oh, we didn't see anything. We throw it away. And because they will never call you right at the moment they did it, they'll call you in a week later while everybody else notice, and they start saying, hey, this looks stupid, what did you do? And then they say, well, let's call the lighting guy. And then what happened when the lighting guy show up? He says, okay, where's the accessory? Well, we don't have any. We didn't see, there was nothing. And it's so it becomes a pointing game, and it's normally doesn't end well. If you plan the project, and if you have experience, you'll probably have some of those accessory in a closet somewhere, an extra one, or if it's a standard accessory that you're using on most of your project, you'll probably have some at the office. Once they send you a picture, you realize, oh my god, they forgot to put a certain lens, or they forgot to put a certain accessory. You bring it in, you tap it on, and boom, done. So it does happen, and trust me, more than and especially when you have subtlety. If you give a like a little frost filter because you don't want to hard the hard edge of the source, you will end up, they will end up in the garbage. Or sometimes they're poor quality, and one of them will, just fade with time or dry. And when they try to pull it out, it just fell down, and or it, broken parts and so forth. Sometimes, I remember with MR16 we had these beautiful lens. When they hit the floor, finish. They would transform into. So so the idea of all these accessory is that you, as a creator, you understand that now that you be able to describe that you want a directional lighting on the wall, and you want them, to be even. Now, how are you going to make this happen? You're going to need to have a certain um, you're going to have more control, certain type of accessory, and those will come when the installation comes. Let's say you really want to have sharp edge, or let's say you want to have a nice soft, glow on the wall. Or let's say you want to have a, like every 5 feet a different color. Or let's say you want to have more contrast. So what's going to happen is that the source, while when you're specifying the source and when you're installing the source, you'll be able to use these different accessory and install them on the fixture or on the source, and then they will help you to control direction, the spread, the softness, the color. And color, sometimes it's not just red, green, and blue. Sometimes you want to have a more neutral color, or you feel that it's not warm enough, or so sometimes it's just an addition filter to give you that color, that deepness, or that vivid effect on that lighting. Same thing with pattern. Sometimes you don't want to see these art hedge arches. So by putting a nice diffuse filter, they will all come and melt one into the others. And other accessory, as we're going to talk later, as I describe this, will also give you a certain visual comfort, meaning that the fixture won't be as harsh, or you won't see the source, or. And sometimes you can save on the price of the fixture by adding accessories. Sometimes you can put accessory on expensive fixtures, etc., etc., etc. So there's a combination of filters and all kinds of lenses and accessory that you can add to the fixtures that will give you this extra control, so that when you have whatever the effect you want to create, you have at least the opportunity. Let's start with the lens. About maybe linear And you maybe sometimes you heard about this. They're gonna call it a 6 by 16. So that has 6 degree by 16 degree wide, 6 degree height by 16 degree wide. So it will be like a rectangular shape. So it gives you, depending on what you're lighting. Let's say you're lighting a mural at a certain angle, you can cover wider spread of material. So the lens, most of the time, when you buy a source, you will buy it directly with the type of lens that you want. Gonna buy a narrow, you're gonna buy a medium or a wide. Most fixtures, when you talk about architectural fixture, they don't have any lens. They just have uh, either a protective glass or an open, an open fixtures. So the way we use those is let's say we have accent lighting. Lenses are perfect for that. Let's say lighting an object. That's perfect for that. Like I was saying 2 seconds, we have a specific we want to have geometry that we want to control the beam. So that's basically the basic lens had a much wider use and a much wider role in the composition of the fixtures. Again, today when we go as fixture, let's say you talk about theatrical or you're talking about rock concert, and you see these beautiful beams that seems to be like those are also part of lens play that are interplay, I should say, that gives you the opportunity to modulate force into a very nice and wide. Now, it is done in a lab. It's not done in the field. We don't do this in the field. The only thing we do in the field is that sometimes we'll go and we'll replace a film. Speaking of work on the bring to think about and makes it nice and soft. So think of that photographer used these big, they call it soft box. This is fused light, go to a piece of fabric, and it just nicely. So it reduces all the harshness, like either in your face or on the wall. It cuts out all the harshness of the source. It also makes it more spread, it makes it more evenly, so that you don't have like spots and so basically when you think of a diffuser, the word says it, and the cool thing about diffuser is that you can have different degrees. You can have super intense and super diffuse, or you can have lightly diffuse, which will give you still that beautiful circle but without the harsh around. Or depending on the intensity or the complexity of the diffuser, will just not give you a nice wash. So again, diffusers are normally just to give you a nice wash. You want to, it's not a dramatic kind of effect. It's very nice. Like you see here, I'm using the ceiling to diffuse the light because my ceiling is white. So that's kind of a use for. And then we switch to filters. Now filters, there's two kinds of filters. There's filters that modify the light quality. If I have a white light, I put a red filter, I'll have some red filter. But there's filters that can adjust different different flaws that you can have in your lights. And in motion pictures, we see that very often. We have different kind of source, and let's say we need to adjust one so it doesn't look like too yellowish or too bluish or too greenish. So it will be they will be added to avoid color shift. And also, like they're more acting as a correcting filters. And that's how that's the job of a filter. So in you can have them to straightly modify the color, or you can have them to just correct, whatever effect you have. And we see this a lot with LED, because and you will see also in LED sometimes you have a little switch that, not a switch, but a little volume control. I would call it a volume control, a potentiometer to be precise, that you can adjust and fine tune the color. That's how you do it electronically, but you can also do it manually with little piece of plastic, special, it's called a gel, that you put in front of a light, and it will correct that. Of course, this is not a permanent situation. It's good when you do something like special effects or shooting or something like that. And you'll see this in a studio. They're kind of a mylar or plastic mount in front of the light with some tape on it or some clamp. And this is the job that they're doing for that thing. Now, another thing that I really, really love, it's called a snoot is to cut the spill. So what is the spill light? Is if you take a lighting fixture and you light the wall, leakage. So we call it spill. It will take and narrow the beam into a visual output, meaning that where also the last thing that a snoot does, and I really, this is one of my favorite accessory, is that it cuts the glare. So let's say I want to light up a scene, and I want to light up an artifact, or I want to light up an area. It will that light in that area, and then I'm not blinded by the rest of the light. It will draw my attention in one direction. And this, when you do like museum or concert or theater play, when you want to create an area that is very, very static, and you want to have light just there, snoots are very easy accessory to have. So art lighting, this, even those are snoot. The other, I just mentioned to you a few minutes ago about an access gobo. A gobo is goes before object. So what is it? Is that it's a little pattern, a shape, or an image, and it's really laser cut into a stainless steel. If you have a fluorescent, or if you have a normal bulb that is frosted, it will not render the same, because the source is too big. And yeah, that's, I mean, that's the easiest way I can just explain it. So you try to have the little as possible source. You try to have also nothing in front, no filter, no diffuse, no nothing, just the filament or the LED, and then you run it through that little that shape or that image, or and then it will project it somewhere. So you can use this to create on the ceiling, on the wall, on the floor, and they're not only, some of them are very functional, meaning that you can have in a permanent installation a gobo cut the size of a paint, and and just adjust, and it will create a very focused area, square it as a framing. And speaking of, there's also framing have little we call them knife, little barrier metal like spatula, and those are part of the projector. And what happened is that when you start adjusting them, you can get these triangular shape that somehow will also restrain the light. But the inconvenient is that you have these huge things on each side of the of the projector, and sometime in architecture or in residential, it's not needed and wanted. They want to have something more slick, more sexy as part of the hardware, and that way, if you have a gobo, you will be able to very focus or keep the light in that shape, and without having all these accessory coming out. That's what I would say, the overview of this. And of course, like I was telling you earlier about color filter, we create mood, we create identity, we create all of those, and those come in a different configuration. You can have color filter that are the same size as your bulb, a par 30, a par 38, MR16. You sheet the 24 by 36, and you cut it out, and you can have some that are tempered glass. You can have, so the color is very there's a wide array of that you can use for color. Custom fixtures for a landscape. We were looking for that beautiful color by blowing a beer bottle. So what we did is we took some beer bottle, we melted them, and we blew these beautiful bubbles that were deep brown, because we didn't really want color anything. We just wanted to show a little brown glow, and it had an opening on the bottom, which were lighting the path. So when you start to understand that you can combine these colors, these effects, these, all these accessories, now you start creating your signature, but also the uniqueness of your project. That it is color, or you're bringing the language is always the same. It's remember, directional and general diffuse. And then from there, we have different ways of delivering the light, and also different way of modulating, so that when we express our design, or we're trying to keep a certain coherence and through the project, with some of these accessory, we can achieve it because they're all the same. That we have a certain pattern in the entry, we have it in the green room, we have it in the bathroom. You still bring the end user into an experience, and all of this is done by the different accessory that you're exploiting for that project. So and there's also how can I say that? there's also combination. Okay, you can have color with a snoot. You can have a lens with a different softness. You can have and all of those depending on how your experience. And that's what I always tell my junior, is that first thing to do is start playing with them, start looking at them, start doing stuff that other people don't do, so that you understand better how to modulate light, how to make it work, how to control it, how to and when you start shaping lights, like we need lens, we can have a snoot, we can have a beam control device, right? So, like I said, we can have barn doors. Now, when you want to soften the light, what do? Well, then we use a diffuser. We use maybe some spread lens. So, and the same thing, we want to change the color. Well, maybe we want to change it radically. Okay, we have red, green, and blue. We can create 16 millions. Or maybe we have, and nowadays also, the cool thing about it is that on each fixture, you start to have uh, a different array of color temperature from 2800 to 6000 degree. And we'll talk about this in color. What's the effect of the color temperature? But you can do it by correcting it. And then you will come with a more traditional source. And how do you match it? How do you match the table lamp? How do you match, etc., etc.? And normally I would start with the hardest one to match. I was just telling you about table lamp, and then I would match the rest of the in the old days, or even now. I'll match every fixtures depending if they do have an adjustment or no with the recess, because I can put these different accessory on the fixtures, which on a table lamp it's pretty hard because most of it is decorative or general diffuse, and I would use this to build up uh, the color scheme. And then we have these specialized fixtures that we can add some gobos, and then we can add some projection, different projection shapes, or right today we can even have image projection. So when we do start now, when we start creating our program, and when we start talking about how our light, you know, um, menu is going to happen, now we know that not only we can take a directional source, but now we can have linear finish. We can have it nice and smooth. We can have it in a snoot so that we have very directional beams and sharp and crisp without having all the spill light. So do you see how with adding these little different accessory, now we can have a bit more control, and from just choosing a fixtures, or choosing a source, or taking a fixture as is and put it in up. Now with this little ideas, and these little, we can start to really modulate the light we want to do. We can start to become a bit more intentional in our design intent. We can refine the delivery, and without changing anything on the fixture, because the last thing we want is to have and modify the fixture, because the fixture is already approved by CSA or Intertech or any of the UL, any of the approving authority. And the last thing we want is to change that, is modify the fixture. But we can modify the light that comes out of it. And normally, any good manufacturer will have all the accessory that I just mentioned to you, also improve part of the standard accessory for the lighting fixture and the source. Wow. So we can go from a very generic light, which I started my first episode by telling you we have some directional and we have general diffuse. And now we can start, designing with light, because now we have the understanding of all the different accessory. So as a conversation rise and as you're evolving with your design, um, now these accessory will help to align your behavior and the behavior of people that are on the projects. Will also help you to reduce the visual noise. Like these little sharp color, boom, out, so that when you're a user, the user experience, you walk into a space, you're not distracted by any um, you know light pollution, not pollution, but I would say light, yeah, light distraction. That's basically it. So it will give your project a little bit more standardness, and this without doing anything, major, or changing the architecture, or. So, like you will have, as an example, in an hospitality setting, you have a very soft, softer and flattening and control light that will make the highlight the grandioseness of a space. And then in retail, you'll have the very focused attention on certain product, so that it gives you more emphasis. And in residential, we have the calm and the warmness, and less glare that the client wants, because nowadays, with all these little 6-inch, we call them pancake lights, that's all you have, 100% glare. So all of these little particular attention that you can swap around, meaning that, if you're not used with to work with museum equipment or theatrical equipment, or even with the normal, like some people are so set on, like when you do a spec, you look at the accessory and there's a little letters and numbers, and then that would refer you to a certain page, and then you look at it and you're like, okay, no, I don't need no accessory, right? No accessory. um, but if you start to think and start to experiment, and maybe next time you talk to the manufacturer, you said, hey, do you want to send me these accessory? I'd like to try it. I'd like to see it. Or can you come by our studio and show us what a snoot does? What do you mean? Most of the time, they don't even know themselves. They didn't try it. They say, well, okay, I got to order it. So now they're gonna go to the manufacturer, they're gonna order it, they're gonna have it, and then they're gonna come to your studio, and you'll probably be the first one who asks them to try it in live, instead, of just saying no accessory. And now you have some mass on how to use this accessory in the future. And most of the time, and that was a very generic question that my student asked me. He said, yeah, but Bob, I don't want to go up on a ladder and try. No, you do it from the floor, and you use the ceiling as your projection screen. And that way you have still the same height, and you'll see at least a diameter. You'll see what the snoot does. You'll see what a lens does, a correcting filter does. You'll see. So use the space and use the suppliers and manufacturers and agents and distributor to help you to start building your vocabulary. And what does it mean for them? Well, it's an extra fixtures, an extra $10, $5 per fixture times 200. Well, guess what? It's an extra $1,000. So again, like, there is an impact. There is an incentive for you to use accessory, not only because there is a cost attached to it, but so that you differentiate yourself from other lighting designer or other expert. Now, um, I'm, to that, I'm just going to add a little note is that if sometimes if you don't think that in advance and you don't allocate this in your budget, at the end, it's very hard to add because most of the money is gone and there's no more change that's going to happen into the project. But if early you have an allocation for accessory lighting accessory or a little budget, that will give you the opportunity to, when it comes to the final, dig into it and use these accessory and you know very fine tune your design. So this is how I operate. I always have a budget for lighting accessory and so forth. um, Sometimes you walk into a project and there's poor choice of fixtures. You can fix that by um, by having the right accessory. I mean, if you have a pancake light, you have a pancake light. Nothing's coming out of there. That's there's no solution for that except to replace it with a recess that has some. But most of the time, let's say you have a recess light, you can change the type of bulb, or you can add a snoot, or you can add a filter. That will definitely help you to modulate the light in a little better way. Sometimes also it's just the trim. Sometimes you will have some tilting trim, and we'll see this when we talk about lighting fixtures, but that can also be something that is part of your program. Maybe you don't need tilting trim on 600 of your fixture, but in some area where you may think that you have different activity happening and you may need to refocus or change or adapt, or you can maybe say, well, I need 30 or 40 adjustable fixtures that I can put a snoot. So if there's a display, a specific display we want to enhance or create just an attention, then we can do it. So as you can see, what's happening right now is that we are taking our lighting expertise to another level. Now we start to control the quality of what we're creating. And the accessory are part also of our vocabulary. So it's not just an afterthought, or maybe, or no, it is part of the intrinsic vocabulary that we have. And also, it has been planned in our budget, which is the most important thing, because coming at the end and say, oh, by the way, we need 250 filter, and we need maybe 75 snoot, and we need some spread lens, that adds up very quickly. And then you don't look too professional because you didn't think about it. But if you think about it when you start and you bring it, and it's part of your budget, and when they come in, there's an allocation for it, you'll look like a hero, because people will look, well, this lighting look like shit. You go there at night and you spend some time with your technician and a little elevator lift, and you modify the fixtures, not the fixture, but you adjust the lighting, your lighting source. What's going to happen is that you're going to be very, very well, because the next day when they come in, they see it. Oh my God, it's a total different thing. And that's how it's happening. So I hope this was that was helping. And tomorrow we're gonna go into the fixtures, uh, and more on. Recently, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast about repair and exchange. So, what do we do when fixtures are defective, and how does it affect ourselves and our client? So, hope you had fun. Thank you very much for having been here with me again. And yeah, coming week number 4. And yeah, let's keep